So with me today, I brought Elizabeth Cute back, Senior Program Manager. We're going to talk to her about the most wonderful, horrible, great, useful, problematic thing known as plastic. Here's something that's so ubiquitous for humans. We interact with it daily in our products like electronics. There's multiple studies that talk about how you can find traces of it in human and animals because we've ingested it in some fashion. There's a lot to plastics, so I brought Liz on today. You think about plastics a lot for B&W.
I do think about plastics a lot. You're correct.
Yeah, it's a big
Too much,
part.
maybe.
But it's good because we have it, and that's something B&W is focusing on, and we're constantly talking about it. But I guess, is there a spot within the plastic realm you'd like to start?
Yeah, I'll actually start with where organizationally we kind of started focusing more specifically on one type of plastic. We've been doing cleanups and litter pickups for 35 years since our origin as an organization, but we've more recently started collecting specific data, and nurdles was one of those examples of a specific type of plastic that really got our attention. And it got my attention when I was along the Niagara River at Gratwick Park a spring, maybe 5 or so years ago, just checking out conditions, doing a little litter cleanup on my own, probably on a morning off or something like that. Beautiful spot. You know, I get my drinking water from the river, and I saw a ton of these little plastic pellets. Whenever you find something in that quantity, it's a little odd. So I took pictures. I was trying to figure out, all right, what are these little plastic pellets the size of a lentil? And something maybe in the back of my mind from a conference or a webinar, oh, these are nurdles. Knew exactly what they were after a minute. Said, oh, they're here. There's so many. How'd they get here? And I'm trying to connect all the dots and figure it out. So this brought kind of down a rabbit hole, and then we actually started to get volunteers to collect data on them. So that's kind of like where it all started.
It started just by kind of a chance. You were out on the water in Gratwick Park, and you see that, and it's like, oh, there's like,
yeah.
That hadn't really been on B&W's radar, you're saying at that point.
Not specifically nurdles, like plastic pollution in general, but this specific type of plastic product, right, the building blocks of plastic items, wasn't necessarily locally on our radar. It's a huge problem in Texas and in the South, where nurdles are mainly produced, right, out of fossil fuels, and they've polluted other waterways, and there's other keeper groups really focused on it, more of like where the nurdles are being created and then polluting the environment. But they get shipped up here to New York for blow molding or injection molding processes. So plastic manufacturers, buy them, and they're getting mostly road transported here, but there's spaces where they're shipped on the ocean, maybe the Great Lakes, via train in some locations in the U.S. So just started to peel back the layers of, all right, how are they getting here? How did they get to the river shoreline? Just trying to figure out this whole scenario, and it's been an interesting several years.
Yeah.
With more and more every year, learning more and doing more.
So the nurdles, they're being shipped here primarily. And again, so I do want to jump back on one thing. When I started here, I started hearing, that's when I first heard of nurdles.
I know, it's a fun word.
Yeah, I do like the word a lot, nurdle. And
yeah. My husband will call me a nurdle. Like, I'm a nerd about plastic, which I'm like, that's fine. I like that.
Yeah, it works.
That's me.
No, when I'd first heard of them, they would be described as you just said, the size of a lentil. And this is an Adam problem. I can't picture a lentil. And I'd look at it, and I remember going, what is a lentil size?
No.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people going, of course.
Half a grain of rice?
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's another.
So I can picture that. And that's how small these things are. And that's what you were seeing washing up on the shore at that time. And so producers that want these, they're grabbing these little tiny half grains of rice or lentil-sized things to use. And in the process, what's happening? Like, how are they then? So they're shipping it up here. What's happening then that they get in the environment?
Yeah, so they're getting shipped from mainly like Texas down in where a lot of fossil fuels are being taken out of the earth, the oil, and being made into these kind of building blocks of plastic products. And they're created in these tiny little pellets because they are easy to pack into shipping containers. They fill up every little last space, easier than shipping a solid block of plastic. That would be cumbersome. So all these little nurdles can fill up a giant silo on site of a manufacturer, or poured into a machine hopper to then be melted down into whatever they're making. You can add colorants, different chemical additives to make the plastic flexible or stiff, or whatever you want to do. There's so many things that people add to plastic to give it the properties they want. So there's blow molding and injection molding manufacturers a lot more places in Western New York than I ever thought. And, they're facilities where people work, and they make a lot of useful products. Some are single-use plastics, which is a whole other separate conversation and problem. But some are really useful products that you would use again and again and again. So, plastic has a place. Some plastic has less of a place, right? Then we should be thinking about those types of single-use plastics a little differently. But yeah, so they get shipped up here, and there's so many ways that they can spill or get lost from their intended stream. They can sneak out of the truck somehow, or once they're on site, they're landing on the ground and the rain washes them off site, or down a storm drain that maybe connects into a waterway. Or I've learned that some of the silos they store these nurdles in have an outlet on the top, so that if the silo fills up too much, it just will escape from the top, and then nurdles can become airborne, and it could rain nurdles, which seems like a weird design and maybe a flaw. But I've been learning about all these different ways that they could escape the stream, and volunteers not in Western New York but in other places have found them along railroads, right? Again, they're just kind of shaky. They're small. They find little cracks. They shake out of their container, and then they're in the environment, and we all understand how water flows, the wind moves, everything's going to that low point, which is our waterways. And then we're finding them on the shores of rivers and Lake Erie, and some could be coming from local facilities, some could be coming from other spaces in the Great Lakes because of how the water flows through the huge system. But we've been finding a bunch, and then it's, how are these affecting our wildlife?
Right.
And how are these affecting us as we get our drinking water from this water, right? These nurdles have chemicals in them, or they can actually be little sponges.
So it can absorb stuff, and it can also decompose too, right?
Yeah, they'll eventually break down, and we've found nurdles of all different colors. So some are getting dyed, and some are not necessarily dyed a color. But yeah, they can be little sponges. They eventually wear down, break down into smaller and smaller plastics, creating microplastics. So a whole swath of issues that could stem from, these little plastic pellets that somebody might overlook and think they're just a little rock. But if you know what to look for, you can't unsee them.
Yeah, and I can totally see how you're saying they can just almost fall off and get into places. I think of, my kids at home, they have these beads or these, they're making bracelets or something, or these projects where they can heat these things together with an iron to make a design, a shape, a character, and they just break apart so easily. And then it's you can see where the issue is of them just kind of easily getting out there because they're small. There's so many of them. And you were starting to talk a little about some of the issues with that. So that's in the environment, fish might be ingesting it, animals.
It looks like a little egg. Looks like a delicious treat, right? And scientists have found plastic in all kinds of animals, birds, fish, whales. Not that we have whales here in Western New York, but I'm assuming that there are fish in the Niagara River and the Great Lakes that have nurdles in their belly. I just need to find the scientist who has that to show me. Email me.
Yeah, but they can break down to that microplastic element.
Eventually, any plastic can, they're in the water. It's like a washing machine, right? It's wearing things down. It's out in the sun. Sun makes plastics brittle, like a milk jug. It sits out in the sun. It's eventually going to crack and become fragments of plastic, shards, and eventually break down smaller and smaller and smaller. So there's so many plastics that we see along the shorelines, and some you can identify, that's, that's a balloon, that's a cigar tip, that's this. Some are that's a piece of something, who knows what it is. But when you can identify the item, that gives you room to explore, how do we stop this from winding up here and kind of going up the stream of its production and where it's coming from, who's using it. And nurdles, you're not buying nurdles, Adam. You're buying pellets of, that's different though. But nurdles are being bought by a specific type of company. It's a little bit more specific, and so that's where we're there's some opportunity here to figure this out and maybe slow this from becoming a bigger problem. Kind of like the microbeads And the microbead ban at Erie County was really one of the first counties in New York State to kind of sign that ban into law, and then the whole state kind of followed suit, right? Like those little tiny beads we were finding them in our water. Scientists were finding them in our water. We're going through the sinks, piping to the wastewater treatment plant, and then out into the waterway because they're so small, they're not filtering out for them. Okay, that's in a specific type of product, face wash, lotion, toothpaste. All right, we can control that. Same thing with the nurdles, right? We can figure out where they're coming from a little easier than we can all these different colored plastic shards of who knows what they are. So that's what we've been trying to do here locally is, all right, where are we finding the nurdles? Let's just locate them and then look around upstream. Is there a facility nearby? What are they doing to keep nurdles from polluting the environment? And we've been learning from other groups in the U.S. We've joined Nurdle Patrol, a national, citizen science
Does it seem
group.
awesome that there's a nurdle patrol out there?
Yeah, we have our little local Nurdle Patroller volunteers, and then there's, a nationwide project that we've kind of joined up based out of Texas, right, where the nurdles really started being identified as a pollution issue. But there's groups all over the U.S. and in other countries too, looking and identifying nurdles, collecting data, and then that data can be used by advocates, researchers to, make positive change. So
because then we'll see where it's coming from. We can say, hey, this is a problem. Mm-hmm. It's out here. We need to stop the problem. And getting legislation, getting people advocating for that change. I know you're with the volunteer ambassadors. It seems like we've had trainings for that, telling people what to go do, how to look. What are like if you were given a quick synopsis on a volunteer ambassador training for nurdles, what's kind of happening at that time?
So when we have volunteers sign up for Nurdle Patrol, right, they meet me on site somewhere along the Niagara River, right, Gratwick Park, where we found a bunch of nurdles before, because we walk them through the data collection process. They actually get out there with their tweezers, forceps, and pick up nurdles, 10-minute process, collect how many they can in 10 minutes, and give them just some backstory on what a nurdle is, right, building blocks of plastic products, where they're coming from. And people are really interested. They might have never heard of it. Yeah, then like what does Waterkeeper do with this information, right? We're locating more of the facilities that are using them here, trying to do some investigative work and make change through either we do work on and support policies that limit plastic pollution from our Great Lakes and local waterways, but we also have conversations with the DEC or different facilities. Hey, we noticed this. Have you noticed this? Right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be so complicated. Sometimes it can just start with hey, we're concerned. Are you concerned? Mm-hmm. And usually, you might be surprised. They might be like, oh, wow. Yeah, I am concerned. Like, let's see what we can do to, fix that. Or we honestly don't know how long these nurdles have been on the shore. Like, I have more questions than answers through doing this. Some are maybe coming locally. Some are coming, from the other side of Lake Erie and washing up the Niagara River towards Lake Ontario.
Because they might be shipped elsewhere, and then whatever happens, it gets in the water, and it's coming our way.
It's coming our way over time, right, just based on how the watershed flows. But, we can assume some are flowing from the land here, some are from the lake, upstream.
Is Gratwick Park kind of one of the prime areas you continue to find nurdles?
Yeah, definitely one of our hot spots. And it's there's a curve to the river there, and where the way the wind flows, like a lot of things get deposited on the shoreline there. Found a lot of just different plastic in that location. So that's why, like, it's not just one source that is contributing to the nurdles from that spot.
Gotcha.
There are definitely others, because we've found nurdles along the Buffalo River, along the Lake Erie shoreline. They're downstream on the Niagara River. They're all over the place, but there are definitely some hot spots. And the more volunteers we have out there, the more eyes we have out there, the more we can start to understand just the extent of the nurdle pollution in Western New York, and then that gives us more room to explore solutions and advocacy efforts.
Part of this has been highlighted more so. I mean, we've nurdles and plastic pollution advocacy work at Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper has been going on for a while, but a coworker of ours, Gene, has just turned us on to this one book called Adrift: The Curious Tale of the Lego Lost at Sea by Tracy Williams. Really good book. If you're in the Erie County Buffalo Public Library system, it's available now as soon as I return it back. But it talks about a shipping vessel that had a bunch of shipping containers on it in 1997. They fell, I forgot how many containers fell off, but a lot of them had products, and one of the big containers was Lego products. And it was right off the southwestern shore of England. So since 1997, these Legos have been washing up both on the shore around that area and the Cornwall region, if you want to go get specific. But then with the ocean currents, they're being found all over the world in some way. And it's not just these Legos. That's kind of the impetus for the story. But they're finding all these other products. And I think it was just fascinating to see that. And I talked earlier about my kids playing with these types of toys and how it can just get out there. And I hadn't really given it a thought of, I guess, our own use of plastics. And trying to reconcile with this idea of, oh, my kids are playing with this really cool craft, but these little pieces are going to fall off at some point, break out. And what will happen to them? Because in this book, Adrift, it's really highlighting this idea of these ocean currents carrying it all over the place. And these plastics will probably be here almost forever in some way, whether it's the microplastic once it breaks down.
Yeah, they never go away. They just get smaller and smaller until you can't see them, but they're still there.
You read the book too. What did you think of it?
I really enjoyed the book. I loved the use of photography and pictures to make it really just visually interesting. And I mean, it spoke to me because I'm a natural, I pick up litter when I walk my dog. I'm always finding things, but then I'm also some of the beachcombers highlighted in the book. I have my little stashes of weird plastic items that I collect, and because I've worked with artists before, I have a little artistic side to me as well, but you start to find the same kind of items and they do tell a story, and it's interesting, and people can connect visually with things. So I have a lot of just, kind of plans, and they had some really good imagery in here, and it does make you think differently about these items you might use every day, use it once, throw it away. But there is no way, right? What after the trash bin, where does it go? You think it goes to the dump, but often it might get diverted and end up in the water, end up in the ocean, end up in a fish or a bird.
We've all seen garbage, someday it's a windy day when trash is put out and it's just blown across the road and it goes down to a sewer, and then that leads out to the waterways and oceans. So it's not uncommon in a way for it to get out there.
Yeah, sadly it's not. And once you see that and you collect plastic litter from the shore of your drinking water, which is why we love getting folks out to do cleanups, you just think so differently and you see things in a different way. It changes you, right? And it makes you rethink things you might be purchasing, and you're supporting those items with your money when you're buying them. And can I replace that with something that isn't throwaway, one use? Can I buy something that I could reuse over and over again? Or do I even need that? Do I have something that I already own that I use a little differently? And, that's that just thought of individual impact. It does build up. Obviously, there's a lot of responsibility with industry, producing items. So you got to attack the problem from both ends, right? The individual and the producer, and try to make a change through both kind of avenues.
Right. If you get enough people interested, they'll change their ways and continue to advocate to say, you're doing this, you're bringing in if we're looking at nurdles specifically, you're bringing these in. What can we do to make sure they're not just falling out of a ship or train? Or can you do something different? We don't want that in the environment. We don't want that out there. So that's, going to that other side of it you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've had success with that, right? We've found nurdles, we've had conversations, and that's resulted in change at local facilities. So we have had success, and having data and having conversations can make really good change, and keep on what we're doing to keep making more positive change. And everyone can join in on that, either by collecting nurdles or getting involved with our work in other ways, or just taking a little inventory of all the plastic items you're using and kind of rethinking that about how you're using them or what you're using. So we can all make little changes together to protect our water, our Great Lakes, our drinking water, and all the critters that need it to survive too.
Yep. And on our website, we have several pages devoted to plastic pollution, advocacy, volunteering efforts. Stay up to date on that with volunteer ambassadors. Check out the pages, bnwaterkeeper.org. Anything else, Liz?
Get out there and pick up plastic while you walk, right? pick up trash while you're walking around, you get a little workout in, and you're keeping your community clean. And then you can log all that data for Waterkeeper in Clean Swell, or come to a future Nurdle Patrol training. We host them every spring.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Adam.
Before you go, I just want to remind everyone, contributions from individuals are what make this work possible, what Waterkeeper is able to do on a day-to-day basis. For every dollar raised, Waterkeeper leverages that tenfold through securing grants and other funding to help deliver over 60 projects and programs each year. Donor dollars support our efforts to research and monitor our waterways, design projects, advocate for good policies, and even construct habitat and access improvements. These efforts in turn create a significant economic and environmental benefit for our community. In some cases, like our Buffalo River restoration, it has been shown to create a 40-to-1 return. So whether you can give $5 or $5,000 or more, please know your dollars stay local, will be multiplied, and will help make change in our waters and community. And many thanks again to the Buffalo-based band Snowbelt for their intro and outro music in this episode. You can find their songs and albums, including their latest album, Norris Avenue, on all streaming services. Check them out. Thanks again for listening. Be well and do good.